Paras Bhai, Girish Bhai, all my seniors and friends. The topic for me is a very narrow one, that is core investment companies. It is as narrow and as broad as how you look at it. In terms of narrowness, if you see, there are only 26 registered CICs as of date, or at least for the last figures I've got. Only 26 of thousands and perhaps lakhs of NBFCs which may be there in one form or the other. There are only 26. But if you look at it another way, as we go a little deeper, and I'm sure you are familiar since this law has been there for at least 4 years now. There are thousands and tens of thousands. We are told that many notices have been issued, and as per my knowledge and as per their knowledge also, that many of them actually CICs. Some of them require registration, some of them don't require registration. So, what are the conditions under which what is the concept of a CIC? What investment company? That is CIC. What is the concept of that? Is it different from NBFC, or is it a subcategory of it? What are the benefits of registering it? What are the conditions subject to it? It is registrable and subject to which it is exempted. And what are the conditions if you are a CIC and registered? Then what are the ongoing conditions which you have to comply? The directions of 2011, which really put this forth, are hardly 3 or 4 pages if you remove some of the tables. So the terms are very minor, but if you see in the background of the law, there are many issues we have to consider. So we have what is the concept of NBFC? You all know. The whole first was discussing what is an NBFC, and we all know that one of the repetitive while in the break also many people again and again raise this query. If I am using my own funds and I am putting in my either in my group companies or in my own shares, why should I be required to be registered and all that? All that these questions have been coming since 1997. No point in repeating them. You are an NBFC whether you like it or not. Some people are still taking that interpretation that if I am merely a holding company, then I may not be an NBFC. But that is now becoming riskier day by day, and particularly since 2011. That is something which is subject to real question. So CIC is really a special type of an NBFC. It has certain liberal requirements and relaxations. So for registration, the process is much smoother. In relative terms, you are seeing how Mr. Swami was describing the very detailed procedure, your police report, and so many X number of things were required to be given. For CIC, the requirements are in that sense simplified, but in another sense they are also quite detailed. And there are certain exemptions given, so which may make having an CIC a very easy job. That once a year only a simple compliance will be required. Like all other laws in this field, the sources of this law are quite broad. We have originally the directions of 2011, then there are certain draft guidelines which were issued earlier. We have the RBI Act, we have various circulars, and since Paras Bhai was mentioning to Mr. Swami earlier, for this particular field at least FAQs are also given. And if you read the FAQs, in some way they go beyond, in some way they differ from the directions. And as you'll see later on, the way the RBI Act and the directions are structured, the FAQs have almost, they are not even quasi-law, they are as good as law in certain situations. So sometimes if there is a difference, there may be a difficulty, but otherwise if there is an extension, sometimes it is better to take a view that they are law and follow it by the letter and spirit. More than that, actual practice and discretion of RBI. Take an example of one of the reply given that fixed deposits are not financial assets. Now these things you may not find in any notification. So what RBI, when you go to RBI's table and ask them that what is this like, for example, is derivatives a security or not for the purpose of directions, for the purpose of RBI Act, or is, for example, fixed deposits with banks, are they financial assets or not? Because RBI says orally, and we know that they don't treat it, then that becomes law. But it may not everything may be in writing. Slowly it is coming. Another example which we also see later on is mutual fund, investment in mutual funds. Now that is security and therefore a financial asset. But suppose you invest in liquid funds like treasury funds, is it a financial asset or not? So in some places RBI has actually said that this is as good as FD with bank. But today he was saying that mutual funds. I don't know whether he meant all types of mutual funds. So this is, there is a lot of things there on the website, it's worth reading. So what I'll be discussing later on, I'll be trying to give references to them. But generally, it is the culmination, that the bottom line from all these sources of law. What we have to discuss is, the concept. There are certain definitions. What is the process of registration? What are the exemptions available? What are the advantages of becoming a CIC? There are many advantages. In fact, it's a lot of headache is going on. In some cases, we are just out of the RBI purview totally. So you can do whatever you want, provided you comply with certain basic conditions. Even registration is waived. No other category that way if you go to see is waived, even if you are an NBFC. Except, let's say, if you are a merchant banking company or something like that, regulated by SEBI and registered with SEBI, then you get exemption. But CIC is up to a certain level, even up to 1,000 crore company, you should be exempt from registration altogether, and therefore out of the purview of all RBI regulations. But then the conditions are stiff. So the whole idea of, if we go, later on we go to the background of the law, the idea was to alleviate certain difficulties. And we'll see that a CIC is mainly a holding company. So mainly, I would rather say predominantly a holding company. That is the whole objective. You would be a CIC if you are a holding company of shares and securities in group companies. So that is the definition of group. We'll be going in great detail. But you should be your whole, objective of existence should be holding shares, securities, loans in group companies. That also called holding and not trading. That is why that legal concept people create a dispute about that. If I am merely holding company and not a trading company, am I an NBFC at all? So RBI has again now in one of the articles they very clearly specifically said that don't raise this question again. If I am holding you are a holding company, come and register or fall within the exemptions and comply with the conditions of that. Otherwise, you are a holding company. Some senior counsels still want to differ, and whether you want to take that risk or not is up to you. You should not be trading, and this condition is very, very strict. So that is again we'll be going to detail that how it can work. Earlier RBI used to exempt on a case-to-case basis. Now those exemptions, in a sense, are no more valid. If you are a CIC which is now registrable as per these new directions, then those exemptions may not be valid. But if you are satisfying certain conditions for exemptions, that exemption would be valid, and you can stay away from RBI till that time. I don't want to go into very great detail, we are a bit short of time, but to just highlight that this difficulty of holding companies, you're having your own funds and doing either share trading or having a holding company. Most of industrial group always have 2-3 companies. Sometimes you have 200-300 companies which have pure holding companies holding shares. And many times it is either for estate planning, sometimes for tax planning. So you have a corporate entity, you are not trading in, sometimes mostly you are not trading in the market also. You are just holding the shares and keeping them. They are dormant companies, so to say. In 2000, there was a financial companies regulation bill was introduced where they wanted to remove all such things. Because when in 1997, if you recollect, this law was made very hastily. It was made in the form of an ordinance. It was mentioned that CRB default was there was a big scam and all that. Recently, Thorat Committee went further. It gave a very, very good suggestion that up to 100 crores if your size is there, then you should be totally out of RBI purview. So whatever you are doing, whether with your own funds, whether with outside funds, so long as you are not inviting public deposits. Other than that, whether you are taking bank loans, whether you are taking outside loans, whether you are taking public funds, up to 100 crores of size, these companies should be out of RBI purview and no registration. If you are an existing registration, just come and surrender and go out of RBI law. And up to 1,000 crores also, if you are taking, if you are taking public loans and the limit was 1,000 crores, for exemption. I was talking to Mr. Swami that what has happened to this 2 years back. This has happened. So he told very clearly that we are not going to implement it. We are not happy with the way the market is functioning. There are too many people raising funds in various ways. So Thorat Committee, except for certain things which have already been implemented in March 2015 and little earlier, everything else you can say that it has the whole exercise was a waste. Number of CICs registered, I told you that actual registration is only of 26 companies today, but the exempted are in thousands. So this is where one would have to see that are we eligible for exemption, and then they should ensure that it is exempted and conditions are compliant, because conditions are quite strict. And if you are not exempt and non-registered, these are also in thousands. What to do about it? That is one of the things which we will be going into. a CIC is in the business of acquisition of shared securities loan, that is actually holding. You should be holding 90% of your total assets, or rather 90% of your net assets in group companies only. So you cannot give 1 rupee outside in the market. What is the definition of group companies? There will be special definition will be seen later on. But it should be group companies only 90% of your total assets, net assets. Total assets and net assets, the difference is very simple. That certain things like cash and bank balances, liquid funds you may be holding, and advance tax, these 3-4 items are removed. The rest you take as a net assets, and of that 90% you should be having in group companies. The remaining 10% is for things like that you might, if at all you want to have a car or something, some other assets if you want, you can keep them. But other than that, 90% should be in group companies. Even of this, 60% should be in shares and certain convertible instruments of group companies. So remaining can be in terms of loan, but everything, practically all of your assets should be in group companies. That is the definition of a CIC. It cannot be non-company. So you cannot say that I have a holding company and I invest in LLP or a partnership firm or something like that, or I give a loan to one of the group company member who is a non-corporate. You cannot do that. You have to put everything in companies. So that is another thing. You cannot deal in the shares. So you cannot do trading. Now, take an example of a promoter company of, let's say, X listed company. They will be holding, let's say, 50-60% of the shares of that company through this particular entity. Now, what is required is that you hold it and keep them holders. And if you want to buy, it should be a very, very special case of purchase. It should not be going into the market and buying and selling and all that. Even selling has to be through block deals. And block deals we have clarified is not what SEBI understands. It should be in the form of, you have got 10 lakh shares to sell, you sell it as one block. Don't say that, don't say that I'll share 10,000 shares today, then, buy 2,000 tomorrow to get a better price. No, you have to offload in that particular manner. So, dealings, purchase or sales are not allowed. And, this may actually create difficulties because many times promoters also do deal. They have to comply with insider trading regulations and other whatever is required. But they do deal. So this, if you want to avail the benefit of the CIC, whether it is a registered entity or a non-registered entity, you need to ensure that there are no dealings. There are two concepts: systemically important and public funds. And the systemically important till March 27, 2015, it was at par with the commonly understood systemically important definition, that is of 100 crores. Now they have taken a departure. For systemically important for CIC, they have kept a stricter rule. And for other companies, they have given a higher exemption. And public funds, the concept remains the same. We will see these two things. These are the two most important things which will decide whether you are an exempt CIC or non-exempt CIC. If you, so that will require a little more detail. This is just an example. I was saying that many times what may happen is that you are a holding company, but for some reason you want to sell some shares. So you sold, you are having 100 crore, 200 crore of your balance sheet and you have sold 25 crores worth of shares, and you don't want to invest in your own group, in the same company. What do you do with that 25 crores? RBI says it's very clear that, either you keep idle in your bank account or keep it, let's say, in a treasury fund or something like that. Otherwise, you give it back to the shareholders. You cannot do any other business. You cannot invest in any other, shares or securities and make any profitable use. That money has to be either idle or out of the company to ensure that 90% of your net assets remain in group companies. Now, first thing is that you would be, if you are a holding company, that is, if you are complying with the 90%, 60% ratio which I have said, there are further two things which you have to see, provided you comply with those two things. First of all, your size of total assets. Now, that's total assets, not a net asset which I refer to here. Total assets, means the whole of the total side of your balance sheet. If it is more than 100 crores, then only you are required to register. So if you are less than 100 crores, you are out of RBI for your total. So you don't need to register, don't need to file anything. So that is a good benefit. If you are having public funds, so suppose you are having a size of 500 crores. So first condition is satisfied. The other cumulative condition, that word used are and. The other cumulative condition is you should have also accessed public funds. And public funds is different from public because we have discussed this quite detail earlier in the morning. If you are accepting public funds, and public funds may include any money received from a director, any bank loan, any example given of a car loan, any money which you have received from outside which is repayable, that is public fund. So if you have public funds, So you should have, the two conditions should be satisfied. Your asset side should be more than 100 crores. You should have been taking public funds. If these two conditions are satisfied, then only you are required to register. If not, you are not required to register and you are out of totally RBI public totally. So to take an example, suppose you have got 2000 crores worth of assets. So first condition is satisfied, but you have not taken a single amount of public fund. In that case also you are not required to register. So that's for many in terms of quantity at least there are many companies who are going out. If you see the list of the 26 companies, only very large companies like Tata Group 3 companies are there, or GMR Group Holding Company, or ILFS. Those companies, because they would be accepting public funds and they are so huge. Other than that, most of the, because 26 cannot be the number of holding companies in India, considering just like 7,000-8,000 listed companies which you have got. So each company would be having many group company, holding company. So all of this have been able to avail of the benefits, but I am not sure how many of them are really complying, and that is why the auditors will come and auditors' duty is little bit ambiguous. I will be dealing only with auditors of CIC, and that also I will be touching upon it because we have a separate session on audit. But whenever a company auditor is auditing, he has to check whether the condition is satisfied, and it is possible that some of them, there was some of these very strict conditions that you cannot do one trading. You have to keep all your 90% of your assets in these two categories, and that may not be satisfied. So public funds, intercorporate level, Bangalore, almost everything are considered. What are the advantages of registration? Suppose you are a 200 crore company and you are accepting, let's say you have taken a car loan or you have taken some money from a director or even shareholder. So it means you are required to be registered. The advantages apart from exemption for certain companies is that the process of registration for CIC is little simpler. It is as detailed as other one, but it's in a narrow field. And if you are otherwise your things are in order, it should be a smoother process. Although time may be taking in months and not in weeks. The compliances are lesser in the sense that there are barely any. You have to just file one report every year. Of course, on an ongoing basis, you have to comply with certain conditions. You should see that actually 3 or 4 only. Mr. Swami was talking about more than one group companies. So in case of CIC, there is a very interesting point made, is that if you have more than one CIC in the group, the asset size of all these CICs will be total up together to check whether this 100 crore limit is exceeded or not. So if you have one company of 50 crores, another company of 60 crores, another company of 30 crores, individually they may be exempted, they appear to be exempted, but since they are totally more than 100 crores, you will be required to register. Acceptance of public funds also. Now that there are certain conditions, but generally speaking, if any of your group companies are taking public funds and then lending internally, then all the companies may be required to be total up and then conditions satisfied with. So you cannot break up your companies very easily and get out of these registration requirements. I have discussed a few things here. I will be going a little bit fast. What the other two big conditions which you have to really see are capital adequacy ratio and debt equity ratio. These are special for CIC companies. Capital adequacy ratio for NBFCs generally, non-deposit, we have been seeing that now how it was only 6.65 earlier and now they become 7 and all those things. For CIC there is a special formula, in fact it's much more stricter and it may make sense also, but we are going into the formula. You should, for being a CIC, one very important condition is that you should not be having any public deposits. And public deposit definition, you all know by now, we have been having this since almost 15 years now, that public deposits include any amount received from any person unless it is exempted. So ICDs may be exempted, but if you take deposits from in a certain way which does not fall within the definition, like deposit from foreign companies which are foreign entities, provided if complies FEMA, they may not be public deposit. But otherwise, many things are public deposits. You should not be having public deposits. If you are having even 1 rupee of public deposit, then you are not exempt, and you will have to go to compliant NBFC. You won't be even treated as a CIC. So neither you can be registered as a CIC, nor you will get the benefit of exemption from CIC. In the process of registration, this we will see a little more detail later on, is that if there are any non-compliance, this is a very peculiar requirement of RBI for CIC. Like suppose you have not confirmed something about FEMA. They will say you go to enforcement department and the relevant department, get your compounding and then come to us. So sometimes it's a chicken and egg. You go to the enforcement department, they'll say, no, no, what about your CIC registration? So what, in practice, sometimes they compromise and say that, okay, in enforcement department, while compounding, they'll say, okay, give me an NOC from your CIC, and it is Department of Non-Banking Services. Give me an NOC, that is enough that the violation does not significantly harm, if there is no serious violation of CIC, so that type of NOC is given, then you may be able to proceed with your compounding. Other than that, company law, SEBI, if there are violations, they are looking at it strictly and they are trying to say that you sort these out, or at least satisfy one way or the other that these are not serious. These directions came on 5th January 2011, and like the earlier law, they have provided certain conditions that in what time you should apply for registration. So if you are required to be registered, if you are existing on 5th January, you are given 6 months to apply. Once you apply, as soon as you give the application form, you can continue. So RBI may take 2 years. In fact, they often take a long time. But if you once you apply, you can continue your business till your application has been disposed of. For new companies, you have to apply within 3 months of becoming an CIC. So this is a difference. In case of NBFCs, you cannot start the business before applying and getting the registration. Here you can become a CIC, but within 3 months you are supposed to be becoming, and past regular exemption will have to be considered again as per EU law. So if you now are not following the guidelines, then you should have applied within 6 months. You can convert from an NBFC to CIC. If you can look at your balance sheet and see that you are already a CIC, or you can, by doing certain restructuring, you can convert yourself to a CIC, the asset pattern and everything. Then you can do that, approach RBI, they will either deregister you or give you the benefit of the new exemptions. So many, we have been told that so many companies have not registered and letters have been sent. So what is ignorance of the auditors, ignorance of the companies. That is one of the most common causes. Many times I have seen that it is already too late. You should have applied in 2011. You have not done. Now if you go, it is like you are telling RBI that so now what to do? So companies just sit. They try to say, okay, by next year I'll try to restructure, do something. But often by the time of the next year, they see that 90%, 60% those things really you may not be able to comply with. So sometimes they are able to restructure. So the conditions appear to be strict, but otherwise they are very simple. If you restructure, then at least for future you are out. There are many times non-compliances. You may not have, may have done certain violations, and therefore you don't go to RBI. And the other thing is the intimidating the whole elaborate process. There is a very detailed application form. There is a checklist of some 54 items. So many things. So if your things are well in order, then those 54 items may be easy to comply with. But many times I've seen people get stuck in even in small things. You need a CIBIL report. Now that is mandatory. Earlier they wanted bank report from each of your bankers. Now getting a bank report from a nationalized bank may be easy if your relations are cordial. In case of private companies, I've seen that they just refuse. They say you will not give. So when you go to RBI, they say, okay, fine, give me the name of the bank. And they sometimes used to phone up and, either they say that you go back and from there give me a call. Or sometimes they call up themselves. So that much power is there of RBI. So sometimes that may help if you meet the top person there, like general manager, and they are very strict. They said a bank has to give you a banker's report. But this process, you've got a foreign subsidiary. There you are, you are required to take a banker's report. And that is not easy because some of those foreign countries, they don't have this concept of bank reports. So they will ask you that what is the whole purpose is there, what is the format, and these delays are there. So sometimes the whole process of preparation becomes so elaborate and cumbersome. In the meantime, that the time is clocking. You are supposed to apply within 3 months. Now 3 months also may not be enough. Curiously, what happens is that many times companies go, they prepare the application as best as they can, and they say, okay, these 10 items, 5 items are not there. Without that, you accept. So many times, the RBI may accept. But what it really does is, within a short time, it comes and says, take your application back. The advantage of submitting the application was that after submitting the application, you can carry on the business, even if registration is not given. But what RBI does is, it says, take the whole application back and come again. As soon as you take the application back, you are back in violation, because you don't get the benefit of having submitted the application. So this is like having a practical problem. With the application, you need auditor certificate, board resolutions, many times if you are not, suppose that 90% and 60% things you are not complying while you are applying, so you have to show some reworking of the assets and even a business plan to show that how you are going to comply. So that is where RBI is liberal. They try to make very, very strict. You know, if you ask for 3 years, they say no, finish in 3 months, and you literally bargain and try to come somewhere in between. And they monitor it also to ensure that, and they try to understand that okay, how you are going to sell this and how you are going to get back to the conditions. Civil reports and everything I have discussed. Now, I gave the point of group companies. You are supposed to invest and lend only in group companies. And group companies, we have various definitions under law, various laws. Group companies has been given a specific definition under the CIC directions. Is that they have given a very, very broad. So you can give to many of your group companies. It's not that it has to be a group company by a very narrow definition. Because if you see under Companies Act, for example, earlier, it was a very, very narrow definition because the purpose was something different. Here they have deliberately given a very, very broad definition. For example, subsidiary and parent are obviously group companies, but even joint venture and associates, and this is as per the accounting standards. Promoter, promotee. So if you're a promoter and of a particular company, your relation with that is of a group company. Related parties. So if related. So many times what may happen is that you might get even far broader than what you even thought. So if any of these conditions are satisfied, you become a group company, and you can invest in that. The other side of that is that if you fall in any one of these group company definition, then the size of the assets will also be counted to decide whether you are eligible for exemption for that 100 crore limit or not. But broadly, this is very broad, and the auditors, as we will be seeing in the session on auditors will have to certify this list, and many times it's difficult, to find the details because the group may be very, very large. So how does auditor of company X know that who are the other companies which fall within this group? But anyway, that exercise would have been undertaken. The other condition which is there is that adjusted net worth and capital adequacy ratio. These are two related things. But adjusted net worth has got some more conditions also. The whole idea of adjusted net worth is this, that it is about capital adequacy ratio. We saw about 14% and 15% capital adequacy ratio is there. Here it is 30%. In the sense that your adjusted net worth as a percentage of your total risk-weighted assets should be at least 30%. So it is much, much higher. So if you're an NBFC, you could get away with a lower. So this is somewhere you have to think about doing legislative arbitration. That should I go for registration NBFC or CS, because here you will need 30% capital adequacy ratio. The definition of adjusted net worth is much, much different from what is there in NBFC. So there is another consideration in deciding what you want to do. What it broadly says, adjusted net worth consists of the own funds. This you already know. This is as per the prudential norms. Your equity share capital, your convertible preferences, and certain specified reserves. From this, you can add. You're a holding company. So usually, what will happen in the shares which you are holding, the market value of those shares would have risen, or sometimes it may have fallen. In that case, they have given a conservative formula. If the price of the shares has risen, then 50% of the appreciation we can add. But if the price of the shares has fallen down, you have to deduct the whole of the reduction. So for that, from there, that is where you arrive at the adjusted net worth. To that, now you have to do a weighting of assets. If you have done prudential norms compliance, you know what I am talking about. You take all your assets that are risk weights given, multiply with them, and come out with the total of the risk weighted assets and certain off balance sheet items. Like if you are given guarantees, to that also you would apply weights and total it up. Of that, your adjusted net worth has to be at least 30%. So if it is not 30%, you are violating. So when you are applying, if that 30% is not complied with, you can tell RBI, give them a pure and concrete plan at how you are going to do it. In an ongoing basis, if this 30% has gone down, then as auditor you are supposed to report it. Now, whether you are supposed to report them, there are a few technical issues. I'll come to them. But other than that, if there is a violation later on, then that has to be reported by the auditor, by the company. You have to go there and give them again a plan that how you are going to correct it. What your registration may go over it. The other, other similar condition which is there, but it's in a different way they are given, is that you should have a debt equity ratio of not more than 2.5. And that debt equity ratio is actually an outside liabilities upon adjusted net worth. So it's again a different definition. But outside liabilities, they have given explanation what it is. Anything which is payable to a third person, that is an outside liability. So you total that up. divide it by your adjusted net worth, and you get it should not be more than 2.5. So if you look at it from mathematical point of view, it cannot be more than 40%. So if you go to see your capital adequacy ratio taken from this way, it has become even more stricter. But the whole idea is correct. If you see from a logical point of view, you are holding shares. You cannot take so much. You cannot leverage yourself so much that your let's say your own funds is just 20% and your outside loans are 80%. If a small fall in the price of the shares is there, your net worth will become negative. So that is why they have put, in case of NBFCs proper, you may be having trucks and so many other things where something is there, the market value will not go down by 20% or something that easily. The advantage of, even if you are registered, if you apply for registration, get the registration, there are three benefits which you get. One is, this benefit is not immediate, it's logical that you don't have to give auditor certificate that you are an NBFC and you continue to be an NBFC. You are not an NBFC. Once you are a CIC, you are not an NBFC, you are a CIC. Therefore, in any case, the requirement of the prudential norms that you should give an auditor certificate is given an exemption. But these two are even more important, particularly the second one, concentration of loans and investment. We were discussing earlier that NBFC prudential norms say that you should not give more than 15% of your net owned funds in one company and more than 25% in one group. So that is the concentration of loans. Now, in case of a CIC, the whole purpose is to give one particular group. 90% of your assets have to be in one particular group. So this condition does not make sense, and therefore they have given exemption for this. And capital adequacy ratio, again the exemption is logical. They have got their even more stricter version of 30% and 40% capital adequacy ratio. So the exemption is obvious in that. Once you are compliant with this, the only thing which you have to do as a registered NBFC is that you just give a annual certificate of auditor. And now I'll leave really to open here. So read you all know that in 2008, actually in 1998 earlier, but in 2008 directions were given to auditors, and which earlier speakers explained that even if there is one mistake, you are supposed to report directly to RBI. You all know that. If you read that, the CIC directions are strangely not referred to in the 2008 directions, and obviously not 1998 also. So very technically speaking, there is a question open to thought whether those auditors' direction apply or not. I would say they would apply because they have referred to at least the Act. So if there is something, because these exemptions are given pursuant to the provisions of the Act. So you have to be little careful. Like again, we are talking of RBI, where we are talking of the not just the letter but the spirit. So as an auditor, your position may become a little difficult. But I would still say that the direction should be complied with, and if there is a violation, you are supposed to report to RBI. Consequences of non-compliance, there are penalties and all of that. I was hearing earlier that if you get a notice from RBI, don't panic. But if you read the notice, what it refers to is section 58B. If you read section 58B, what it says is that you are not complied with the requirements of registration. What are the consequences? Minimum and mandatory 1 year imprisonment, no compounding. So what RBI is doing is they are sending these letters even to the auditor. If a particular company has not complied with, the letter goes to the company and goes to the auditor also. An auditor reads that and he says that I did not even know this is an NBFC or a CIC, and you want me to say that I'm facing prosecution where minimum 1 year mandatory imprisonment. There is the words used are imprisonment, minimum 1 year, up to 5 years, and fine. So there is no question of compounding, there is no question of exemption, and you say don't panic. It's something difficult to believe. But the reality is that RBI does not prosecute of these type of violation unless you have taken outside funds. But still, on paper, a person who is not who is familiar with the NBFC directions, he would have complied with them. He is not familiar and he reads it. I'm sure till he goes to RBI, until RBI general manager offers him a cup of tea and assures him, till that time I'm sure he will finish. I don't have time, but there are overseas. I'll just refer to this direction. There are certain special directions given by. See, you all know about FEMA, and there are certain ODI directions, ODI regulations under FEMA. In addition to that, RBI is keeping through its DMBS separate control over overseas investment by CICs. So there are certain directions are there, and you are supposed to take prior approval for making for investment, or in case of exempted cases, you are supposed to report within 50 days. Branches represent their provisions, you can really go through them. There are quite few conditions. We are talking about takeovers and mergers. We were told that in 2014 there were certain directions issued, and now we require a prior approval. And also in 2015, just a few days back, they issued draft directions. point here is that just again I am being technical, that these directions of 2014 somehow they did not take into account CICs. So takeover and mergers of NBFCs do require prior written approval of RBI. The words used are not CIC, but again, if you look at it this way, if you are an exempt CIC, takeover and merger of exempt CIC should not require, and I don't think it should require approval of RBI. If you are a registered CIC, you might take a technical interpretation that those directions do not apply to me. Now we don't know what is the final directions pursuant to this draft direction of 2014. Let's see what are the final directions. But if we keep the 2014 benchmark, still I would say that if you are a registered NBFC, go to RBI, take their approval. Because one of the reasons is that if you see the conditions of registration, one of the conditions will always be there that if you change your constitution or something, you have to come to us. Not only that, if you read the act, there are also similar conditions there. So if you are doing a takeover or merger of a registered CIC, you should definitely do that. If you are unregistered, if you are required to be registered and unregistered, nothing to be said because you are already in non-compliance. With that, time is short. I think I already extended even the time given to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jain Bhai, for taking us the basics of this on the CIC. We may take, because he has skipped some part or taken it the concise form. We may have some few questions on this for next 10 minutes. Seems that people prefer lunch instead of questions.
So the session was quite fast. So taking of questions.
The presentation already
We have been given more time for this presentation. Search have been given more time. You would like
no,
to
but he has already covered what was given to him. He has not skipped anything as such.
I'm not saying it's skipped, but
Yeah. But anyway, we gave more preference to the questions which we had in the earlier session because we had a regulator with us. So we did pointed quite at that point of that time there. Whereas if you have quite at that time, the things would, because the questions came more than what we anticipated. Because as I said, the questions are more than the participants. So we try to concise and put it in form. Yeah.
The point here is, the concepts are very simple, the size of assets and public funds. Those things we already know since now public opinion, what is 10 years, what is systemically important, what is public funds. So there are two things. Another two concepts are adjusted net worth and your debt equity ratio. These are the four concepts of CIC. If you comply with if the first two conditions, one of them also not affected, you're not required to be registered, everything is over. If you do require registration, register it and comply with these two more conditions. So that is CIC directions. Now there are final points, there is no end to it. In fact I didn't want to refer, but in addition to the 4 or 6, 5-page direction, there is another 10-page FAQ. So there are so many questions which RBI has already answered. So it's like there is no end to it, but essentially that is it. What I tried to do was to introduce you to that there are other facets, like takeovers may be there, you might be doing overseas direct investments, which may not be part of your original direction. Just drawing attention, do your homework. Sunday is there.
thank you.
This 90% investment is to within the group. This 10%, I think you have general authority to invest in outside companies.
Outside companies. See, again, this is the typical approach of RBI, is that we may write something in the directions, and these type of questions they will answer in the FAQ. So there, what if you read those two together, what they are saying is you cannot engage in any other activity. In fact, the direction themselves say that you cannot engage in any other activity. That 10% they say is for things like some other asset you want to have, cash and bank, not cash and bank balance, but something else you might want to have. You might want to have a car, you might want to have some deposit for, having an office. So where will you operate from? Normally, these holding companies operate from the promoter's office itself. They don't really need office. But some liberty has been given, but don't carry on any other activity.
As an auditor, if there are 8 to 10 group companies, how do we really come to this total?
Take the total assets side of all the companies. There again, good question is that, because RBI allows, if you have, internal set-off is there, when you go to them, they may consider that, okay, there is, you have given loan, A has given loan to B, B has given loan to C. Then, the internal set-off, they may allow. Unless you are taking that money has come from outside, then it's a different thing. But otherwise, the basic concept is that you take the total of the assets out of all these three companies. In fact, in reality, the matter becomes even more complex. Like, you gave the example of merely total assets. The other side is that, how do you calculate the debt equity ratio? Suppose you have taken three companies together. Now, one company has got loan, other company has not got. One company has got a loan equity ratio of 9:2, because, the other company has given security. Now, whether that first company has contravened the directions. So, RBI is little bit ambiguous, but across the table they say no problem. If you are overall, do a sort of a consolidation, just a simple, total asset side, total liability side and work out. Then we are saying that, okay, fine, you have got more assets in the other company, more net worth there, and those overall, your 30% is satisfied, your 2.5 is 200 is satisfied, there is no problem.
It has to be net off.
For counting whether the 100 crore is or not, don't do net off, go to RBI and take something in writing. Because the directions are not clear, they don't give this type of exemption.
Thank you, Jain, for enlightening us on the things and also giving the punch how you read this CIC guidelines in just 2 sentences. So this will help to many of us who are there. With this, may I request Dinesh Poddar to offer values of vote of thanks.